afternoon and welcome to the September 26th Council Work Session, and we are looking forward to hearing this long-awaited report, so I will turn it directly over to you, Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'll turn over to Christy Hammett and Chief Skinner to take us through the presentation, and Chief Saludik, and Kevin Alltucker. I was going to have you introduce them all, but I guess I'll introduce them all. Take us through this important conversation.
Mayor, Venice Council, we're really excited to be back. I was kind of looking back at past notes. This is actually the fourth work session this year that we've had on this really important topic, in addition to all the previous work that's been done. As we get into the meat of the discussion today, one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that we really focused on some core facets moving forward. You'll hear us talk a lot about prevention with a specific emphasis on youth prevention, police, fire, municipal court, and of course, the needs of the homeless in our community and how to serve those and work better with our partners. So without further ado, I'll get into the agenda of what we're going to cover. So today we're going to provide a brief overview of the work that's happened since we last met with you in July. You might recall at that point, you worked and gave us some good direction on the outcomes that have been guiding us in terms of developing these packages throughout the summer. One of the things I would be remiss to not mention is that you see a lot of people here, and the people that are sitting in this room have put a lot of work into thinking about how to best move forward, really understanding inside, their professional opinions about what the gaps are within the system, and then thinking about how best to solve them. And I really appreciate the work that they've done, and we wouldn't be here today without really the sprint that the team has been on over the course of the past couple of months. So today what we're going to do is provide that brief overview that I mentioned, talk about the desired outcomes and how we've focused our strategies around achieving those outcomes, and then a little bit about next steps. So this is a timeline that's somewhat familiar to you. You might remember that we started in 2016 talking with you about different strategies, and at that point we were already a year into working with our system partners. We've always been taking a systems approach to finding solutions, and at that point we said, how do we become the most efficient service model that we can be with the resources that we have today, knowing that we had some growing gaps that we had to address. Along the way, there's been a lot of investment, nearly $6.5 million of investment in community safety, public safety initiatives since fiscal year 15. And that is a significant amount of money, but what we know is that doesn't begin to address the gap that we have within the system in serving the community. You've seen the slide that in previous presentations where the needs minus capacity equals the gaps. And so what we've really been trying to figure out is what is the level of capacity that we need to address the gaps in the system. There's a team of staff that have put together a really nice video that I think speaks to some of the gaps within the system from firsthand experience.
Over the last 5 years, Eugene's population has grown, and so has our community safety needs. While we've tried many creative programs to try and maximize the resources we have, the truth is, the need is just outpacing our capacity to meet the growing needs of this community. Over the last 4 years, calls to our 911 center have increased 21%. At the same time, police and 911 staffing has remained relatively flat.
Folks who have probably had their worst nightmare, like their house has gotten broken into, their child's been hurt by someone. Maybe that's not an in-progress situation, but for them, that's their worst day, and we need to be there for them. We are finding that we are not able to do that in a timely fashion at all.
On average, the time it takes for an officer to respond has increased by almost 20 minutes. While urgent, life-threatening calls are prioritized. Other calls that impact our community's quality of life often hold until officers are available to respond.
And have a lot of activity going on that you don't know about or uncertain about and have concerns about. And then you call the police and there's no response. What do? I've come to find out that they just do not have the personnel in order to be able to come to these, we'll call it lower risk kinds of situations, but they still remain public safety issues in our community.
Police are unable to respond to 1 out of 3 calls due to lack of patrol resources.
And we can see the people who are frustrated on their end, on their side of the call, saying they're not responding, I'm not going to call, or I don't want to talk to them anymore. At the same time, it's not because we don't want to go there, it's because we have such few resources to be able to meet all of the demands that are being asked of us.
Our Fire and Emergency Medical Service, EMS, faces a similar problem. Many of the calls to our fire and EMS are for people experiencing chronic conditions who need ongoing care or help. But without resources, they are forced to rely on emergency services. This means it can take longer for the fire and EMS to respond to people experiencing life-threatening medical emergencies, those with chest pain, cardiac arrest, stroke, trauma, breathing, and sepsis. Many creative programs have been applied to this problem to maximize resources and meet community need. Programs like Community Outreach and Response Team and Cahoots work to connect people in crisis with appropriate services and reduce the need for costly emergency response or law enforcement intervention. Many of these programs, however, have limited capacity and funding. A long-term solution is still needed. As our needs grow with our community, it is important that we acknowledge and attend to these trends in order to preserve the safety and livability of Eugene. To learn more about community safety, what we've done and what's next, visit the City of Eugene's website and follow the link to community safety.
So one of the things that I mentioned previously in talking with you in July is sort of what are those outcomes that we're trying to achieve? And so that video really identifies some of the system gaps that we're experiencing. What the team has really been tasked with is finding a results-driven approach so that people can experience something different within the community, especially when they call for service. We've looked at it and kind of talk about it now in the terms of prevent, respond, and resolve. So prevent, what are those things that we do on the front end of the spectrum that help keep people out of the system? And we know that there's needs to be a strong emphasis on youth and learning and all of those things that go with that. So we've really focused a lot on those packages. And then you've heard a lot about the lack of response time in the video, so I won't go into that. And then in addition, as we look to resolve situations, what are the ways that we can do that help change the course of the cycle with people not continuing to cycle through the system? How do we get to the root cause of the problems that's driving some of the issues that we're facing? And with that, I will turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Christy. So for the past 3 months, I've led the steering committee on developing the information that you'll be seeing later today. And we really focused on outcomes. You can have the greatest plan ever, right? But if you don't have outcomes clearly in mind, it's really not going to happen very well. I'm a graduate of the Oregon State University Engineering program, and we had a saying. The saying was, plan the work, work the plan. And that's what we're attempting to do here. So on this slide, you'll see the 4 components of how we conceptualized the outcomes. Christy's mentioned that the systems approach was really front and center, and that was kind of the DNA of our work. So we always kept in mind that fire affects police, affects municipal court, affects homelessness, and social service outreach affects prevention. So all of these 5 areas are interrelated, and you can't have a siloed approach. So we took a comprehensive systems approach. One of the remarkable things that I noticed over the summer were these collaborative discussions taking place between these 5 areas. And so this was a place where we strengthened partnerships. So there were remarkable conversations between Eugene Police and Fire and EMS, and remarkable conversations with municipal court folks and the prevention folks and the homeless and social services folks. So the packages and the information that you're going to see later today reflect that underlying value of strengthening partnerships. Christy also mentioned this really important idea of matching service with needs. And so just to give you an example, does it make sense when EPD receives a person down call in the downtown area, for example, and they send the cavalry, or maybe it's fire and EMS, and they send 2 fire trucks and an 8,000-pound ambulance. And when they get there, they find that that was kind of an over-response. So one of the things that we took a really hard look at this summer, and you're going to see that the results here shortly, is how do we match the response to the need? And Chief Zaludik and Chief Skinner will give you more details about that. And finally, one of the really, really, really important outcomes was how do we move from kind of a one-time funding strategy, maybe a Band-Aid approach, to more of a stable, adequate, and consistent funding strategy. And we're also going to present information to you today on that as well. I'd like to spend a few moments telling you about the steering committee and the work that was done in the past 3 months, and how we blended professional frontline expertise with best practices, both locally, statewide, and nationally, and combining that with, well, what does our community need? Because when those 3 things combine, expertise, best practices, or what the research says, and what the community needs, if you draw a little Venn diagram in your head, those 3 circles combine. And that center portion where they combine really is, that's best practices. And that's what we were aiming for. The steering committee was made up of frontline folks who have street-level expertise, who know the difference between community policing and broken window policing, who know the difference between advanced life support and basic life support, who know the difference between warehousing homeless folks and propelling them to a better place. Folks who know the difference between a court system that tries, convicts, and sentences over and over and over again with many of the same people, compared with a court system that actually meets people's needs. These were the folks on the steering committee, and they supplied their expert street-level expertise to the process. A brief mention of some of the best practices that were brought into the process, with the 21st Century Policing report that many of you are familiar with. Captain Kamkar with Eugene Police brought that in and integrated it with the work that he provided. What does the community need? Well, how do we figure out what the community needs? Well, a lot of that is inherent. Many of us have spent a number of years here in Eugene. Many of us care deeply about Eugene. Many of us are professionals here in Eugene. Okay, that's great. But what do the folks in Eugene want or need? So to that end, we sent our chiefs out to 26 events over the summer. And I think, well, 3 events, that'd be okay. That's probably typical. 5 events, that's pretty good. 26, outstanding. And they're going to have a chance here very shortly to tell you about some of the feedback that they received at these neighborhood events, at downtown events, Touch a Truck, that's a big one. Some of the like Chamber of Commerce events, Eugene Greeters. So they really had a wide variety of events, and they were able to talk with folks and listen to folks. And so they're going to be telling you some of those stories. But before I turn the mic over to them, I want to touch briefly on another way that we determined community needs. And they had to do with 2 surveys. You heard Dr. Manross give you a report on his scientific survey that was done in early July. And that provided scientifically valid information about high-propensity voters in Eugene and their attitudes and beliefs and hopes and wishes for our city. I won't spend any more time on that because Dr. Manross did a great job of summarizing his work. But what I do want to tell you about is that we took his survey and we put it online on a City of Eugene website, and we made it available to anyone who wanted to take it. We had nearly 2,500 responses. That's a lot. We also added 3 qualitative questions, which was really great, and that was our plan. So we patterned the online survey after Dr. Manross's survey. In fact, it's almost word for word, but then we added 3 qualitative questions. Well, how much qualitative information do you think we received? It was a ton, right? We had, like I say, almost 2,500 respondents. We had 250 pages of text, of people writing comments about their hopes, their fears, how they feel about safety in Eugene, what they want from public safety services in Eugene. And just in the next 30 seconds, I want to tell you about the major themes that came bubbling up out of that rich qualitative data. Can you guess what maybe the first most dominant theme was? Homelessness. Very good. So that was front and center, very strong, prominent theme in the qualitative data. And within that theme, there were a few subcategories. One of the subcategories was, as you might expect, I'm tired of looking at, fill in the blank, just move them along, do something. I'm tired of talking and talking about it. And I am very concerned about the level of crime and drug use and bad behavior that's associated with a particular population of folks that they perceived to be homeless. That was one dominant theme. Now, balanced with that was also an interesting theme that was like, well, I understand that homelessness is a complex issue in our community. I'm concerned about it. I want to have the city do something, but I want it to be a thoughtful, compassionate, reasonable approach. And so that was kind of the balancing theme. Folks in the qualitative responses let us know that they were concerned about safety in all areas of Eugene, not only downtown, although it was mostly, comments were certainly downtown-centric, but West Eugene, Santa Clara, River Road area, along the bike paths, in our parks. They're concerned about public safety, community safety. There were some less dominant themes in there that are worth mentioning because they're very potent. And the very potent themes had to do with concerns around racism, hate and bias crime, the rise of white supremacy or white nationalism in our community. And so it's worth mentioning that those data were in the qualitative responses. I get pretty excited about talking about the survey, but I'm going to turn the mic over to Chief Skinner and Chief Zaludik so that they can tell you about what they experienced at the 26 community events.
Oh, I think it's the next one. This is funny because he has Joe written on his slide and I have Chris written on my part, so we're gonna share this. And we had some team members that shared going to some of the events with us. We went to enough together that at the end we joked that we could do each other's piece of it. So I think that's why we showed up, because we didn't want him doing mine.
I know more about advanced and basic life support than I ever thought I would, trust me.
No, that's true. And so we got to know each other and know each other's issues very well. And so I'm really thankful for that opportunity. But we did hear some common themes. And basically, we started out by talking about what a different community we work in, because for the last 30 plus years, we've had a partner like Cahoots to help us with many of the challenges that we have. And we really do appreciate that partnership. And because we do things differently and we're thoughtful and we treat people with dignity, it's kind of changed of how we take care of this community. And so we're thankful for the opportunities we had through the support of our basic life support, advanced life support last year that kind of positioned us to meet many of the needs that are still gaps in Chief Skinner's shop. So with that, I was going to thank you for that support that now is going to be ongoing. And that's the hope anyways. And I'll turn it over to Chief Skinner so he can tell you how things went for him this summer.
What a tremendous opportunity for me as your new chief to engage in the 26 different events and connecting with all segments of our community. I can't think of a better welcoming for me to get in front of all these people and have them have a sense of who I am as a person and as a leader, but maybe more importantly, get a sense of who this police department is and, you know, where we want to take it and how we're going to get there. Lots of really thoughtful conversations and, quite honestly, a lot of really tough questions at the end of that. It was honestly less about Joe and I's presentation, even though we felt like we were delivering some great information to them. It was less about the time we spent delivering the information and more about building the time on the back end to answer all of the questions that we had. And trust me, there at some points we had to just end the evening. And we heard over and over and over again thoughts and concerns from our community members that mirror all of the information that we have in both the scientific and the non-scientific survey that we put on the website. And overwhelmingly, the sentiment from our constituents in our community is the fact that they feel very, very confident in this police department's ability to respond to life-threatening situations, serious in-progress calls. We saw a tremendous example of that yesterday, and the ability to get our arms wrapped around a very, very complex issue on an enormous crime scene in a very sensitive area of this city, and to play that through to a successful conclusion and ultimate resolution to the investigation that we hope has some positive outcomes. But the people that we talked to were more concerned about the fact that some of the livability crimes that they were dealing with, the illegal camping, the trespass, the vandalism, the cold calls, were being met with almost little to no response from us. And the fact that we have a community that is starting to get desensitized and starting to get to a place where they become complacent about calling us. And if there was one thing that I told them time and time again is, while you're frustrated, while we're frustrated with our lack of meeting the needs this community has, please don't ever choose not to call, because it is important for us to constantly be monitoring where we have those issues throughout our community, collecting the data, identifying the hot spots that we need to pay attention to, and that data is so valuable for us. And so I've worked with the community to try and say, even though you know that response will be delayed, please don't let that be a deterrent to you making those important phone calls to us. Conversely, with the police department, is getting to a place where the police department isn't okay with the fact that we can't answer the calls for service, that's our new norm, that we become complacent as police officers and as police professionals and saying it's all right that we can't get to 80 calls on average of service a day. And we're not. We're not satisfied with that. We're not satisfied with the level of service that we're able to provide on the grand scheme of things. And so that time with them just validated all of those points. And I think for me, gave me a really good sense of what this community is asking from this police department, and has helped me formulate somewhat of a short and medium and long-term game plan on how I think we can meet those needs and how I think we can start making a difference in meeting those needs and move towards a healthier model of a community-oriented police department, as opposed to being a fully reactionary police department that we are now. So thank you for that opportunity through this timing. This slide that you see here talks a little bit about that systems approach. And it talks a little bit about the way we grouped those types of things that you're going to see in the proposal that are under the umbrella of prevent, respond, and resolve. And they're probably fairly intuitive as you read those, that that's exactly where they should be. But I think the diagram is more important than the actual text, and understanding the interconnectedness and the way they all work together. There is no effort by adding police that does not have a downstream effect on our system. And we have to be thoughtful about not just expanding the capacity of one area of our system without understanding the cause and effect relationship throughout the entire system. And as healthy as we may feel at EPD, if we add a bunch of officers, it doesn't do us any good if we can't start chipping away at the 5,000 misdemeanor crimes a year that we file in our municipal court, only second to Multnomah County in this state, that we have to have capacity to be able to deal with those. So that's just an example of how we see this interconnectedness when we talk about a systems approach.
I was going to jump in and talk about some of the prevention. Fire prevention, crime prevention, preventing the opioid crisis, and even homelessness prevention begins with literacy and early literacy. I didn't know up until a few short years ago how much literacy impacted fire safety and the ability for somebody to be safe in a fire. Something that I learned that was, I guess, intuitive, but I didn't realize it, is if somebody is not literate, smoking cessation programs where they cannot comprehend the material that is trying to get them to change a behavior are not effective. So you can't get people to change behavior. Many of the early interventions that we're going to talk about are focused on early literacy, are focused on our youth, because if we're going to have a 5 and a 10 and a 20-year program to reduce the influx of the population that we're trying to manage in a healthy way, we've got to do it in part from a very young age, and that has to do with reading at the 3rd grade level. Real quickly, to talk about some of the services, and I have a subject matter expert in the field. I'm assisting Renee Gruby with some of her program because of the overlap, but let's talk about the youth mental health services. What those services do is provide a counselor to recreational activities where behaviors are becoming apparent, that people that either socially or having behavior issues that need immediate intervention so that the health and well-being of everybody in that environment is cared for, and that these individuals are identified to get the support they need early in their life, so they're mainstreamed in an environment where behavior becomes part of their ability to connect with society. All the early intervention programs, including the 15th night, that supports our most vulnerable population, which are youth that have been homeless for less than 2 weeks, that have the best chance of reintegrating into a homed environment. And if they extend beyond the 15th night, the statistics show they're more likely to be chronically homeless. And so focusing the efforts there is very important for this community, especially for that vulnerable population. The after-school programs at Title I schools are really, I think, so critical to this, which is there are about 11 Title I schools, which means 40% of the population that attend are approaching poverty or in the poverty level. We are servicing 5 of those schools now with the expansion of this, and that's in the partnership with 4J. The levels of these will expand to 8 and then 11 schools that expand to both 4J and Bethel school districts. Very important for the reading and just everything involved, so that education becomes part of the solution to some of the issues that we have in front of us now. With that, I'd like to turn some of the dusk to dawn and sleeping over to Chief Skinner. I can speak a little bit to the Day Resource Center because right now the library has become kind of the de facto day center, and the best use of that beautiful facility is an institute of knowledge exchange and learning, and seeing a population that can grow and maybe get GEDs and move into a hopefully into something that shows a job and moving towards self-sustainment. And so we're thoughtful that that is going to be the best use of that library. But with that being said, this day center will be 7 days a week, there'll be bathrooms and storage and phone charging, showers, smoking and pet areas, and basic medical assessment is part of what's going to go on there. So you catch somebody as they're beginning to have a health issue, and we get them into medical care rather than responding in the middle of the night or responding at a time when no clinics or no health care is open, except the emergency department, which many times is not the best place to manage a chronic or a health care need that has been ongoing and is not an acute problem. So with that, Chief Skinner.
Thanks, Joe. So just for council's information, I think just creating some context around this slide for those that were not on the council subcommittee and for those in the audience that maybe don't have a frame of reference. What the steering committee was asked to do was to come up with 3 different proposals, all that build upon each other in the sense of capacity to handle and to meet the needs and to cover the gaps in our public and community safety system. And so when you see level 1, level 2, and level 3, that is each one builds upon each other as we move from the left-hand side over to the right-hand side of the page in your packet or on the screen. Some of the stuff that Joe talked about, you'll see is carried through all the way through level 2 and level 3. Level 1 is really a support level for us, and then quite honestly, what we have in the level 1 package can be seen more as life support for a system that's already really struggling. And so we talk about the Day Resource Center. The fact that we need to expand the Dusk to Dawn program to being 12 months out of the year is critical for what you're asking us to do in the public safety system. I can't emphasize enough that if you want to take and relieve burden on your patrol officers, your downtown officers, your CSOs, then we have to have places to put people and offer them spaces to go that can be theirs in the downtown core and throughout the entire city. And so that is a big piece of not only our homeless services, but I can't emphasize enough the nexus it has to public safety and the type of meaningful and thoughtful work we want to do as police professionals. The CORT continuation, the Community Outreach Response Team, is so critical to what we're trying to do, and having stable and ongoing funding for that as we deal with our high propensity users and moving them onto a place of wellness is really important. We've talked about how successful Community Court is at a 90% rate of non-offense, not reoffending over the next year. I think it has proven and has been a proven model that we can replicate in this community to expand it outside of the downtown core. So you see that also in level 1 is the ongoing funding for the existing Community Court situation right now, which was grant funded. 10 patrol officers, critical for me to start trying to chip away at adding more patrol officers, but I've been very, very thoughtful about in level 1 and the support level is that taking 10 officers and how do I make a meaningful difference in this community in the short term with 10 officers? I certainly can put them on patrol and spread them around the entire patrol deployment model. And after we accommodate people's much needed days off, vacation, sick, FEMLA, training that they have, oftentimes those squads do not see a net gain with the 10 officers. So my proposal is to take these 10 officers and do something that this police department desperately needs to be able to do, which is create a team of highly motivated, highly flexible, highly mobile officers and or detectives that can identify problems in our community and actually go out and solve those problems. In my former agency, it was called a street crimes unit. There was a unit here in Eugene at one point called the Rapid Deployment Unit that tried to address these types of things. But there is no better way than to identify those things, those pinch points in our community, and actually go out and really throw the resources at them and solve the problems, not just make it better for a day, but actually try and solve the problems. And I think that is a great use of those first 10 officers if given that opportunity. 5 community services officers. Can't overlook the great work that our CSOs do. Our CSOAs are answering calls for service every single day that officers can't get to, and they actually help move the needle on answering more calls for service in this level 1 package. And so it's really critical that we recognize that many of the calls for service don't necessarily need a sworn gun-carrying police officer to respond to, that we can actually get an awful lot done with our CSOs. And they do a fantastic job for us. Highly motivated group. We can hire them quicker. We can train them quicker. We can really leverage them as a tremendous resource in this community. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say and didn't talk about how important our 911 communicators are to this system. They are the entry point by which everybody is experiencing the public safety system. They are taxed and overworked. They're averaging 240 hours of overtime per person a year. They are just absolutely exhausted. Oftentimes, they're working so much overtime. So when we think about our constituents having a positive experience, even if there's a delayed response, having enough dispatchers so we can create a sense of wellness for them so that they're delivering the very best service they can, I think that's really, really important.
If I could jump in on the communication center as well, as you'll see, part of our level 2 programming is also a triage, like a nurse or RN triage within the 911 system. It'll start out building a system with contractors that will allow us to maybe 10% of the calls be not responded to, and direct them to their primary care provider, direct them to an urgent care, or direct them to the proper medical care. These are programs that will be loosely modeled after ones that are effective right now in New Zealand and the UK, and it takes kind of years to spool that up, but this is the beginning of not responding to calls for service that are not low acuity, but really no acuity calls. We did a couple years ago in the summer, we did a survey, and about 650 calls in a row that we went to assist somebody with a medical need. They did not need to go to the hospital in an ambulance. They did not need to go to the hospital. And so we know if we're going to meet our climate recovery ordinance, which includes reducing our carbon footprint by 6% a year, and by 2030 reducing by 50%, the things in level 2 are part of the solution. That includes the nurse triage unit and includes a community response unit that will go out with a small vehicle, evaluate the individual for a social need, a mental health need, a medical need, and then try to direct them to the proper care without taking a fire truck and a fire engine out of service. And it's going to be better for the environment. It's going to be better for the community. It's going to be much better for the individual that's experiencing and needs service other than emergency medical service, which is not what everybody needs. From a liability perspective, we go to many calls to try to determine, are they really ill or do they have an immediate need? And many times it's an immediate need, but it's not the hospital.
So as you see level 2 and level 3, they build upon each other, and you'll see some bigger numbers in level 2 and level 3 in the way of FTE or full-time employees. You can see some of the things that stand out that are the obvious changes is the 30 patrol officers and moving to 10 community services officers for EPD. Adding detectives. You know, our detectives right now are carrying anywhere from 50 to maybe 70 cases apiece, and they really only have the time to work maybe 8 to 12. I mean, think about all of the people that have been victimized that feel like quite honestly, there's a chance they feel victimized twice. You know, when you think about having gone through a really emotional event or a critical event in your life, and you're hoping that you're going to get some resolution, only to find out that there's other investigations that we have to prioritize over the top of yours. You know, I'm sensitive to that and the fact that we need to add detectives. Part of what you don't see on here in the details is understanding when you start adding as many patrol officers as we're talking to that we're asking to add, whether it's 30 and strengthen, or in level 3 where we really transform our system as we see it now with 40 patrol officers. There is a tipping point where we need the support with all the work that they do. Support in community, support in courts, support from prosecutors, being able to expand the third courtroom to open to actually do something with some of these 5,000 cases that we're filing each year. Record staff to support the officers, dispatchers to support the extra work. All of those things are so important to us as we try and build a system that is healthy. Right now, police officers, we have 192 sworn police officers authorized in the budget right now. Not all of those are on patrol. If we are putting as many as we need on patrol based on our numbers now, we have in the low 80s, 83, 84 on patrol, if we have everybody filled. So you can see that adding 10 officers is not a lot of a gain. When we start talking about adding 40 officers, we're starting to make a measurable difference. And here's the difference that we make. Right now, based on our patrol allocation model, 47 minutes out of every hour for patrol officer is spent reactive and going to calls. 9 minutes is spent administratively, which is time to write reports and do some of the things you need to do just to get a break. And only 4 minutes out of every hour is being proactive, where they can actually problem solve, be in your neighborhoods, do what they need to do. And that's where the relationship is built with this community, is when we're able to engage in community-oriented policing. We add 40 officers to this same model. We drive that time of reactive time down to the low 30s, 32, 33 minutes of each hour. That's a huge difference for us. And with that extra 15 minutes, we can do so much in the way of 21st century and community-oriented policing. And so that's what I mean by transforming this, being able to transform the system that we have now, is that's where we start moving the needle and actually doing some of the things that you want this police department to be able to do. And so that's so very important to point out that as we add these officers, there are some metrics that we can point to, that we can come back and show outcomes as we fully develop and maybe transform what we're trying to accomplish right now.
So what does this cost? What do these strategies cost? When we start thinking about the different levels. The spreadsheet that, on the slide that you have in front of you, shows the range of options and the cost, and in the distribution of those dollars by the 5 different service areas that we really focused on. And what you'll see is as the cost estimating goes, or the cost goes up, it's really commensurate with the staffing adds that the police department would need to do to actually move the dial in the way that Chief Skinner was referring to, and how we support those systems that are in place. What you'll see, as both chiefs talked about, is an expansion of some of the things that we know that are working well. So starting with the base level that we're doing today and then building upon that gets us from a $7.5 million option with level 1, which I think that the chief did a nice job of saying it's really a support and it's a Band-Aid, lifeline, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to fix the problem ongoing. Up to the option of adding to the $22.8 million option, which really starts to move the dial in a pretty significant way, as the chiefs have talked about. What it also helps to do with the expansion of some of these service systems is that it gives us an opportunity to get to the root cause of the problem, so that you start not just addressing the behavior on a per citation or per arrest situation, but you actually start helping people find paths out of the place that they're in. So we are often asked, what would we do today? What would be the first step that we would take if we wanted to start addressing the problem? So what the policy team did is took a look at the strategies that came forth. And if you think back to that level 1 strategy, it included a lot of things that we're doing today, things that we've already committed one-time funding to, things that we know have a track record of really improving situations for a lot of people and making the system work more efficiently. What we would add to that is what the chief talked about is the rapid response team, or what I think he had a couple different terms that he used, as well as some dispatchers and other staffing to help continue to keep the system solvent while we work through the longer-term funding solution. The timing of this is really critical, and I'll let the chief speak to that for a minute.
So I have some good news that when I arrived, one of the things that we talked about in this police department was the amount of positions that were unfilled or that we were trying to hire. And we talked really very in depth about our hiring practices. And I challenged this organization to take a 6-month process to 90 days and to do it more times a year. Because if we do our projections and we look at the ability to lose 10 or 12 through attrition in 2019, we were never going to make a net gain on our police officers if we didn't fill the positions we had and plan for those future vacancies. This police department has stepped up, and they've met that challenge. We are running 6 processes a year. Oftentimes they overlap. We're meeting our 90-day goal. We are down 14 positions right now, 14 police officer positions right now. In the last 3 weeks, I've made 13 job offers that are going to start November 5th. We are dangerously close to being fully staffed with the allocated FTEs. In addition to that, I've got 4 more laterals that I'm interviewing next week or in the next 10 days that are could possibly be joining us. So if you're keeping track of the math, we're up to 17. In addition to that, I've got 10 more going to background as a result of the accelerated process that occurred this week that are going to background right now, that if successful in the background and the psych and the med would be onboarded in December 17th. We have a tremendous amount of momentum around hiring. I don't know what it is right now. I have no idea, but I'm absolutely loving the fact that we are on this flywheel is rolling. And I love the fact that we're getting the kind of thoughtful. Dr. Abraham calls me from the clinic where we send them for their medicals, and he calls me and he says, I don't know what you're doing, but this is the healthiest group of officers I've ever seen. But it's also a really diverse group of officers. I've got all genders and many different ethnicities in this group. I love where we're at. I think with this bridge strategy, I just wanted to point out that taking advantage of the timing of being able to get to something soon within an 18 months is critical, because then the sooner we get to that, the sooner we start seeing outcomes and the sooner we start meeting the needs of this community.
So an $8.6 million one-time ask and request is significant, and we hold ourselves to a high level of accountability and making sure that we're thinking about how are we tracking those dollars, how are we open and transparent in the way that those dollars are being used. And so what we would do is establish a specific account for these dollars and then do some regular report outs. Perhaps there could be a team of people put together that sort of help us track the results, make sure that we stay on track. But again, it's really about transparency and being open and making sure that there's no confusion that any dollars that are going to address these issues will be used for that specific purpose. So you might be wondering, what are we thinking about in terms of the 8.6? So the short-term funding strategy could be what we're thinking about is a combination of reserves. Right now, our reserves are in a solid place, and using a small portion of those reserves would still maintain a healthy savings account should some unexpected need come up. We have some unanticipated revenues. You've heard a little bit about that with respect to the marijuana tax from last year, that we've received a few more dollars. One of the things our finance team is doing is continuing to monitor that this fiscal year, and there may be some additional dollars that we could also use for that purpose. And then repurpose some underspending dollars. One of the things that Chief Skinner just talked about was they've been able to hire. Well, that meant they've had a lot of vacancies. And so there's some one-time dollars that we could carry forward and repurpose into this strategy. So it's a multi-pronged approach that doesn't, looks at solving the problem with the resources that we have today, and also backstopping that with that level of accountability. A long-term strategy, it's really important that we recognize that this short-term strategy, there needs to be a level of urgency around trying to figure out what do we need to do to turn those one-time dollars into ongoing dollars. And so we would ask that we get to work on that tomorrow, if at all possible, so that by the time we move into the budget season, that we have some strategies in place that start to build some momentum for what we need to accomplish over the long haul. Long-term funding strategies could be things like a levy or a fee, a levy and a fee, other revenue options plus a levy or a fee, or no levy or fee and pursuing other revenue strategies. And the last thing is if there isn't community support for moving forward, then we go back to where we are today, but try to find as many resources as we can to reallocate at least to this base level one-time strategy that we've put in place. Oh, excuse me. So next steps that what we would be moving forward with is that we would be returning on Supplemental 1 with this strategy in place in more detail around how we would do the 18-month bridge. We would activate a community safety revenue team. The thought at this point, and we're looking for feedback on this, is that to have 3 counselors, a couple of the current budget committee members, and perhaps a couple of previous budget committee members, especially those who, you might remember as we went through the recession, we had a couple different revenue committees. So we have people that are very experienced in looking at strategies about how we could move forward. And that we would ask that they evaluate the funding strategies, and there's probably a component in there to assess what is the community, where's the community interest, what are they interested in paying for, and how much would they be interested in doing if a strategy did result in something like that. And we would ask that this work be completed by February 1st, so it's ready to go as we start moving into the budget season as you prepare for fiscal year 20. And that concludes our presentation.
That was really a great presentation, and so I want to thank all of you for your leadership and your presentation, and thank all of the people sitting behind you who did the heavy lifting and having these conversations, and I think it's extraordinarily helpful, the detail and the process that you've laid out for us. So just want to begin by thanking you for that. I have Emily and Mike in the queue, and then it looks like I have Claire and Chris. And that does it for now. So Emily, take it away.
Happy dance, happy dance. I am really, really excited and happy about this. It's the things that I've been asking for. Homeless, downtown, and safety are my 3 biggest issues, and they're all in this. And the reason I can be really excited about it is because of all the work that's gone into this. This team has really put in the background and the effort. I was on the subcommittee, and we got a pretty good showing of what this is going for. And I really think this is the smart way to do it. The bridge would give us the chance to show these ideas are going to work. And that will get all of us to be excited about it and want to find the funding. And that's going to be critical to find the funding. And to do that, we need people on board, excited. The other thing I really like about this is how well you've explained it. I think you've really taken a very complicated issue, and it's still complicated, but you've brought it down to a place where people can assess it and access it. So that's really vital to get all of us on board with this, and that's what's going to take, because it's going to take all of us to strengthen, resolve, prevent, all of these really great things. And I appreciate the idea of a specific bank account. I think that is really smart. The things that people have been asking us is to be open and transparent and accountable. So if we take this vital money that we're going to try this out with, it'll have a better chance of working. So I really encourage my colleagues to get behind this for the supplemental budget. I certainly don't want to pick at any of the things, because we've got a great, well-researched, well-supported package, and I support it, and I encourage us to go ahead and get ready for that supplemental budget. Start looking tomorrow, today, for the new revenue, and take advantage of this amazing work that's been done for us and presented to us. Go team, go. Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, the chiefs, staff, everybody seated behind you that has done such amazing work on this plan, thank you very much. It's awesome. I also want to take, before commenting there, I want to take a moment aside and say, as a resident of North Eugene, that you folks helped an awful lot of people feel safe yesterday, and you did it really, really well. And I appreciate you for doing it. My daughter goes to Sheldon High School, and I knew within moments that the situation was under control and that my daughter was safe. And I knew I know hundreds and hundreds of people who had this exact same experience, who dozens of whom asked me to convey to you, thank you very much for helping them know that their kids were safe and that the community was safe and that things were handled and under control in short order, because just that knowledge was really, really meaningful to an awful lot of people. And as you always do, we of course appreciate the job you do, but thank you again for doing that so well and for helping us know that. I'm very excited about this. We have a new chief, and now we have a new plan, and I think the community can look forward to new results. And that's what gives me real hope and real excitement for this. So thank you very much for all the hard work.
Claire.
Thank you. While I won't do the physical happy dance, I do absolutely share Councilor Semple's enthusiasm and gratitude for this work. I think what she said is right on, that it's a reflection of the work that you did and staff did to really take in feedback from the community, synthesize it, really think creatively about how we can tackle this very daunting challenge before us and put it in a framework that just about any of us can understand and appreciate and have some feedback for. And that's very difficult. And I especially want to thank Chief Skinner for being brand new on the scene and really jumping feet first into this work in such a robust and obviously effective way. So, you know, I felt like I feel like we have really broken through some of the silos that we had in our city departments as recently as 3 years ago, where, you know, the downtown folks who were planning for downtown were not speaking to public safety, were not speaking to social services, were not speaking to public health. And I feel like something has significantly changed in the approach that we are taking to these matters. And I think that is the only way that we are going to be able to get a handle on them. So some specifics. I really like, as Councilor Semple said, that the proposal is to keep this bridge funding separately in terms of accounting and report back so we can see where those dollars actually go. Clearly, this community values our cahoots services as represented in this report, and it was great to see that our other programs, Community Court, the Community Outreach and Response Team, as well as Mental Health Court, have garnered as much support as they did after people who were not familiar with them got some familiarity and then said, yes, that seems like an important thing to keep in place. I do hope that we are reaching out to Lane County, as they are the provider of mental health services in this community for those who cannot access them privately, and they really need to be engaged with us on these issues in order for us to, again, to be able to get at these things. And a day center, yes, that is a great thing to see on the list. We have one out on Highway 99 that is heavily utilized while not being centrally located, so certainly the community would benefit by another. And I will need a second round, but I'm glad to see that in the report, you took the time to call out the myth that if we provide something like a day center, we're gonna just have more people come here from some other place. And that is a myth that's been repeated many times, sometimes at this table, without any evidence that it is true. And so I'm glad that it was identified as such in this report, and I'll wait for my next round.
Chris.
Thank you. Just incredible work. I second the happy dance, and I think it really speaks volumes to our new approach to how we can address this incredible issue that's really been dancing around for a while, but now we're really, I think, starting to get some thoughtful and deliberate and accountable action on it. And to me, that's always very important to me. You can talk about a topic and you talk about it, but it really has to be something that addresses the many yeah buts that you're going to get on any plan that comes out. Well, that's a nice idea, but. And many of the things we've brought up in the past have always had too many yeah buts, and they kill it because you can't address them all. Because you took the time to go through this the way you did and came up with this comprehensive approach that's so thoughtful, I think it really addresses so many of the yeah buts that you can maintain that momentum, which I think will be important. I am 110% supportive of this bridge strategy approach. But my 110% support is built on the expectation that we have started a clock running, and that clock means we will find the ongoing money. Because I don't want to give you one-time funds, you staff up and hire up and build up just to have it all go away because we didn't follow through. So it is absolutely essential that we are very conscious and aware that as we support this bridge strategy, which I will absolutely vote for, and I think we should have a motion from this council directing the city manager to do this, just to show that we support this happening. But integrated into that is the notion that we will find the ongoing money to ensure this continues. And I want to get to level 3. I don't know if we can get to level 3 in one giant bite or whether we need to build to it, but I think we need to get to level 3. And we'll do it in the way that is most effective, deliberate, and thoughtful. But this is a great start, and it's a start that I want to reinforce, especially around the notion of finding that ongoing money, making sure that this is stable, and then we'll go to the next bite from there and the next bite from there. So at whatever point, if you want to make the motion, I think we should have the city council direct the manager to do this so we can just show that this is something we all want to see happen.
Right now, if you like. No, let's let everyone do their rounds here. Betty.
Thank you. Good work on the bridge. I think we can all support that. It is a really important part of this is a place for homeless people to be. And I was really glad to hear the chief say at City Club that then you need, if you're going to ask someone to move, you need a place to take them. And I think this is something that we've been putting off for a long time. We need a homeless shelter. We need it downtown where everyone can get to it, where there's bus service and where there's near services. And that is an urgent thing, in my opinion. And also, it's important that we do start thinking about new sources of revenue, which is something some of us have been saying for many years, too. I don't know about a levy or a fee, but we have hotels in town. We have a hotel tax, and most places have a bigger hotel tax than we do. Also, I think I would like to look into whether we could shift some of the money that is currently used for tourism to taking care of things locally. But I think any of us who travel know that we, to our hotel, if you go to the coast even, there's a tax added to support local things. And it's an easy tax. It's an easy way to get other people who do use our services, use our city to help pay for things. As for the myth of people coming here, I think that's true, which is why I don't think it's a myth. I think that some people do come here because it's easy. And we need to, points out the need to involve the county and the state in helping us take care of people who come here and do cause a problem, cause us to have to spend more money. But I will support the bridge for now and hope that we will seriously look for fair and possible sources of revenue. Thank you.
Claire, you want a second round?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the reasons I wanted to call out that myth, and certainly people move here from out of state and then become homeless, but it's this myth that we are so nice here and we have such lovely things. People who are homeless come here for that reason, and I have not seen enough data to support it being such a huge issue that it's a burden on us. And I worry that saying that over and over again dampens our efforts to actually address the crisis that people want to see addressed, which is to not have people camping on our sidewalks or being in harm's way because they are unsheltered. So the other thing I want to appreciate, Chief Skinner, is your willingness to bring specifics of how you plan to deploy additional officers. Providing this kind of tactical information really helps us understand what direction you're going in and explain that to our constituents. And so I encourage you to continue with that level of detail as you are able. Very supportive of the additional 911 call takers. We need to stop the hemorrhaging there. People are burnt out, which means they leave, and then we have vacancies and more burnout. and this is just a small tactical thing, but we've heard about, people who've been victimized by burglaries, so it's a crime that has occurred and the perpetrator is gone, and they may not need a sworn police officer to come right out immediately, but they need a customer service-oriented response and someone who is ready to take their report and do it in such a way that that person doesn't feel like they are putting a burden on this EPD staffer to take this report. So that's just a small thing. And then I also just want to appreciate the participation of the police union leadership in the video and for being here in the room today and being part of this solution. Thank you.
I have comments I want to make. Are you going to do a motion in your next round, or do you have
I'll
something else?
combine them both into one if you
Okay,
want.
so if you will let me make my comments first before you do that.
All right, that'd be awesome. I'll
Jump
just,
in, and then you can do it all.
okay,
Okay?
awesome.
Did you need to, okay. So I just wanted to jump in before we do the next round and make a couple of comments. One is that I love in this report how you connect the dots, both across teams and Chief Saludik, I always love the way you make the connection with our climate recovery goals in the work that you do. It's extraordinarily helpful, and I think one of the things I say about all the work we do is that when we face a crisis, that it gives us an opportunity to do things better, and so this is an opportunity for us to actually be more equitable and more fair in how we do things. I was also interested in the survey results, the question that asked, what are the most important things that for the police, for our public safety system? And they were basically all about the same. Like, nobody was really prepared to make a choice between those things. So again, a credit to all of you for really being able to tease that out strategically about where those investments go sequentially and how you sort of phase that out. And that said, I do have one question about this, which is totally support making a dusk to dawn year-round and think it's essential, and it's one thing we can do relatively quickly. We do have a homeless shelter discussion coming, which may also come with sort of some dollar requests, and so just wanting to sort of remind the audience and remind the council that there's another piece here that's really also related to this work and may also come with some expenses associated with it. So just wanting that reminder out there. Okay, thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I did have actually a question. I appreciate the detail of the presentation, and I appreciate what I saw in the calling out of the comm center as a big part of this. I will say to the chief, you may not know this, but before you were hired, I actually spoke to several of the citizen members who were a part of that process of the new chief's hiring before you were here, saying that from my, I'm not a professional in public safety by any means, but I do get the privilege to meet with the members of the unions, both firefighters and police officers regularly, and that was something both from them and from others I'd heard pretty regularly, that the communications center was an area where we had room to improve. So I'm really hopeful that with all that you have here with this plan, that you have more than a robust attention at the communication center, because I think it really deserves it and needs it. And I echo what Claire said about, I personally couldn't do the work that those folks do in there. It would just, oh God, it would break my heart. And so I think they need a little bit of a break to have some help, and I'm hoping that being supportive of this, that they get it. And so towards that end, I move to direct the city manager to include in his proposed supplemental budget number 1, the $8.6 million bridge strategy, and to immediately begin work on long-term funding strategies to be completed prior to February 1st of 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I'd just like to say, when I still have the chance, thank you to John, who's our favorite person to complain to, for doing a really good job of searching and choosing our new chief. I've heard many, many accolades, so I'm really excited. And the last thing I want to say is, looks like we're going to say yes. This is the happiest day I have had as a counselor because it gives me hope. It's giving me hope for a change and a hope to help all of us, especially our most vulnerable. And I hope that our community will also take hope from this and get excited that we can make changes and we are going to make changes. So great appreciation to everyone here and advance appreciation to all our residents for approving of this exciting plan. Thank you so much.
And before we vote, I just want to ask one other thing. So the Community Safety Revenue Team, can you clarify the process around which that team would be formed and timeline?
Just talking to John about that. So I think that maybe, Mayor, if you're open, that the counselors that are interested in participating, maybe there's some process that you've kind of handled that before. And I would make some recommendations around some folks from the Budget Committee as we move forward.
And I think what we will do is we'll talk with Scott Nowicki around who's on the, from the Budget Committee, present and past. And then I think the one other piece, as I've thought about it, we may want to have somebody from the Police Commission also on this group. So that might be a nice add. So as we'll think about that. He's the chair of that also, so that's helpful. So we'll talk with Scott a little bit on both of them.
Okay, excellent. So we'll circle back around that and we can clarify that with council. All right, ready for a vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess we've got it. None opposed. Thank you so much. And that was excellent, very exciting, wonderful work. Thank you. We're adjourned.